Do a quick mental countdown here and we'll get started. Um, cool, that should be pretty good, I think. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. We're here with one of my favorite projects and some of my favorite people in the community too, that's for sure, with the team at Calaxy. With us is Jason and Cooper. You guys want to say a quick hello?
Yeah, hey everyone. Super excited to be here and kind of share some of what we've been up to.
Yeah, it should be good to hear from you. And hey, Jason, too.
Hi, very excited to be here. This is some upcoming fun stuff we're doing.
Yeah, you guys are doing a ton of stuff, and there's so many different like moving parts and components to Calaxy. It's kind of cool to see it all coming together in a really meaningful way and an open source way, which is I'm particularly excited about too. So today we're primarily here, I think, to talk about your voting governance tool, which was recently open source, but you have so many other updates to hit on as well. So we'd love to give kind of a quick update on Calaxy and dive into all that good stuff. If you do have questions for Calaxy or I, please feel free to throw those into the YouTube chat there or on Discord, and we'll be gathering those and hopefully answering a few of the questions as we go too. So with that, I'll pass it over to the Calaxy team here. Hey guys.
Yeah, thank you so much, Garrig. Super excited to talk about everything we've been up to. This is very pretty focused on the open source DAO tooling we recently put out, and I'm excited to share more about it. So I will go ahead and start sharing my screen here. And if anyone has issues seeing this, please yell at us in the YouTube chat, and we will try to get it resolved. But yeah, this is called Just DAO It, specifically on Hedera. My name is Cooper Coons. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Calaxy. Prior to being the Chief Technology Officer at Calaxy, you might recognize me from being a developer evangelist at Hedera for a number of years. So if you remember the Gossip About Gossip podcast or Coding with Cooper series, I'm back and now hopefully releasing some open source software that people find valuable. Jason, senior software engineer at Calaxy, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Well, my name's Jason, and I also I'm known probably on the Discord by those as Bug Bites. I've been part of the Hedera system from close to the beginning. I was able to be at the hackathon and participated and go way back with that. Because of my involvement, I got to meet Cooper, and one day I kind of like, I'll bite. What are you doing? And as they say, the rest is history. And it's an exciting time to be here, part of this, and I absolutely love working on the open source.
Yeah, we're lucky to have you, Jason. You might know him from authoring the .NET SDK, previous Hedera 20 hackathon winner, and also a Hedera MVP, which is how I recruited him to the team at Calaxy. Just goes to show that if you are active in the community, there's definitely teams looking to hire out there, and we are one of them for sure. So we're going to go through a pretty quick agenda. We'll talk a tiny bit about what a DAO is. We'll talk about the current functionality and what the software we just released supports. We'll talk about our current roadmap items and where we kind of see the tools going. Jason will be giving a live demo of kind of the various components of the software that we've released. And of course, we want to save a good amount of time for questions and answers at the end. So again, as Garrig mentioned, if you have any questions, please put them in the YouTube chat. We might answer some of them as we go, but we'll definitely save some time at the end to answer questions that people might have. Even if it's not about DAOs, if it's just about Hedera in general, the .NET SDK, what Calaxy's up to, we're happy to hang out and answer the community's questions. So what is a DAO? Based on the fact that you're attending a Hedera virtual meetup, I'm going to assume that you're pretty familiar with what a decentralized autonomous organization is. For those that aren't familiar, though, I'd highly recommend going to the ethereum.org site. It's translated in a bunch of languages and /DAO or /DAO. Has a really good kind of overview outlining what it is, where it fits into the world. And in today's webinar, we're going to talk about open source software that's now available for building DAOs on Hedera. And you can kind of see the comparison here between a DAO, or a decentralized autonomous organization, and a traditional organization. It's a much more direct democracy versus kind of a hierarchical corporate structure. A lot of the software you'll see us demo today are about how voting is inherent to DAO participation. And you kind of have permissionless access to vote, traditionally with the weight of your tokens or cryptocurrency holdings. And I think one of the most important things for us is that DAOs are, fully publicly accessible, auditable, and verifiable, versus kind of a opaque corporate structure that you might be historically familiar with, which makes DAOs really, really great infrastructure for things like public goods funding, for grants programs, and anything that you really want to be able to track participation and results within. So this is just a tiny bit about what a DAO is. If you are curious or need more links, let us know in the chat, and we definitely have more resources. But we really want to focus on, the DAO tooling currently available for Hedera. There's dozens, if not hundreds, of talks out there about, what DAOs are more broadly. And so on March 30th, a little over 2 weeks ago now, we released what we consider to be some of the first open source DAO tooling on Hedera. Specifically, it uses the Hedera consensus service. And we see this as really one of the fundamental primitives or building blocks for DAO tooling and DAO infrastructure to be built on the network. This blog post is available on our Medium. So if you search Calaxy on Medium, I highly recommend checking this out. And this blog post will have links to all of the software and GitHub discussion boards, et cetera, that you may be interested after the talk. And so just to get pretty specific about what we released is there is a community governed standards, kind of like Hedera improvement proposals that we've been working on within our, the Creators Galaxy ecosystem that we're looking to build. And CGIP 4, or Creators Galaxy Improvement Proposal 4, specifically outlines a way to use the Hedera consensus service to facilitate community governance. You can go into CGIP 4, and maybe we'll walk through that in kind of the end in the Q&A, but it outlines the specific ways that you have to create a consensus service topic, the messages that need to be sent into that consensus service topic, and how you can actually use those messages in the consensus service to build a verifiable voting system. The open source implementation of those standards contains a couple things that Jason will demo to you in a little bit, which is a web application, a read-only consensus service API. So the entire state of the voting system is maintained by the consensus service. And then we have two different validator CLI tools to effectively validate and ensure that the governance is operating as intended and adhering to the standards that the community sets out. And so, if you take this Docker config, users can define a HTS-based token. In our case, it's Calaxy tokens, and an HCS topic, a consensus service topic that they communicate through a README site, through a GitHub, through a publicly known channel. And setting up those things and running this Docker config will kind of bootstrap all of these services, and you'll be able to vote on proposals with the weight of an HTS token. So if you hold, 100% of tokens, you can obviously make decisions autonomously, but even down to just one token, one vote, it really enables direct participation. And so, as I mentioned, CGIP 4 defines the messages that need to be sent over HCS, creating a ballot, voting on a ballot, calculating and posting results. It also defines, what do we do if people vote multiple times? What happens if token balances change in the middle of a vote? And all of those kind of edge cases that you need to consider when thinking about building a voting system. And, I mentioned this is one of kind of the building blocks or primitives for building DAOs on Hedera. And so we really see this tool being utilized with another open source tool that we put out called the Hedera token service distribution tool. So after people use these consensus service topics to facilitate votes, now with the HTS tool, they can use those together, and a community group operating a multi-sig can actually move funds around. So you could imagine people voting on grant proposals, and after this HCS validation tools determined who wins a grant, the community nominated multi-sig would use the distribution tool to move funds to whatever account is awarded that grant. So hopefully these building blocks and kind of patterns for building DAOs on Hedera becomes more apparent once we get into the demo. But we're really, really excited for this kind of initial release. And so we do have a pretty exciting roadmap. Jason will give you a demo today that kind of submits messages and votes through the consensus service directly. And having that kind of multi-client architecture is something we see as really valuable. However, for ease of access, ease of use, one of our top priorities will be integrating Hashpack for users to store their tokens and have private key management, and use Hashpack to actually send the HCS messages. In addition to Hashpack and browser extension integration, we're excited about other types of voting systems. So Gitcoin really popularized quadratic voting. I think there's a lot of value in ranked choice voting systems, and a number of others that we're considering. We certainly want to enable this to be repurposable to other brands, to other logos, other ecosystems. So we'll work on kind of extracting that into a design system. And so the demo you'll see today will be very specifically focused on the Creators Galaxy, but we're going to work on making it super easy to include those design details in the Docker config or environment variables. We're also super excited about supporting HBAR-based voting and weights. Right now we're focused on supporting Calaxy tokens, and so that's an HTS-based asset. But this also begs kind of a question of, how do we get HTS representation for HBAR? This answer is actually a lot more clear in my mind now that we have Stater and XHBAR and staked HBAR as an HTS asset. But we're considering if there should be a way to natively represent HBAR within the token service. And in a world where a bunch of different DAOs and communities are using this software, we would need some type of homepage that aggregates and lists all of the DAOs or communities that people might be interested on Hedera. The current website is focused for Calaxy and the DAO that we're working on. But you should be eventually, we envision a world that's like snapshot.org. You can see all of the DAOs, all of the communities on Hedera, and participate within them from the same code base. And just to talk about a few things that we've talked about or are thinking about and may or may not be on our roadmap, but things we'd love to see exist, or maybe things that people could build in the hackathon, is a way to kind of bridge the smart contract and consensus services to basically use smart contracts to execute the results of votes. Right now, the model implies that you have a multi-sig that operates our distribution tool, but moving this to a smart contract-based solution could help ensure that the DAO is fully autonomous and doesn't need a multi-sig-based board of directors. We also could see an entire other standard if you don't want to use the consensus service for token-based voting. It could be interesting to build a smart contract alternative to that voting system, kind of like Moloch DAO, or you see in other Ethereum-based ecosystems. But importantly, we would love to see a standardized interface, so that way we could still have that snapshot.org like aggregator experience. It could be really interesting if someone built a juice box equivalent for DAOs to fundraise. I think you saw this really successful with Constitution DAO and a number of other projects over the past 12 months. And we're super excited to see a proposal already coming from the community from Matt Smithies and Dovu, which is a way that you could actually have cross DAO voting. So not only would you be able to vote on Creators Galaxy improvement proposals with Calaxy tokens, But you could also potentially vote on them with Dovu tokens or other HTS-based assets, which I think is a really interesting and unique model that kind of highlights how flexible the HCS-based architecture is. If you wanted to support cross-DAO voting with smart contracts, it's a much kind of different technical problem to solve. So super interested in all these ideas, and a little bit of a plug, but we are sponsoring the Hedera 22 Hackathon Challenge. I think that all of these are interesting things that you could spend your time on. And so that is kind of it for the context and setting the stage. I'll kick it over to Jason, our senior software engineer, and just add the disclaimer that this is alpha software, always looking for people to contribute, to add documentations, to integrate other key management solutions and those types of things. And we really want to be good, open source community members and try to put out software as soon as we're confident about it. And so this is, hopefully an early insight into where we're going. So Jason, I'll let you take it away. You're also on mute.
So just 1 second here. I'll bring up my screen. There we go. Should be seeing a screen that has our GitHub project available. Can you see that?
Yep, looking good, Jason.
Excellent. So this is the website that hosts our the HCS governance software. That is just our baby project here. It's pretty new, so hopefully this demo will go off without a hitch, but it's live, so it's for real. So to explain what I did, to just show you what I'm doing today, a couple hours ago went to this website, and I went and I downloaded and I went through and I cloned our repository. At that time, at which time I went into the root directory, and I had to give the software some properties, and I'll spare you the details, but this is as much as you need to do to set up this and get this running on your own. You need to have a test net or a main net that you want to connect to. You'll have created a HCS topic and an HCS token, which is your voting token. And that's all the software really needs outside of Docker. So once you spin it up with Docker, you're going to get a lot of output, and inconsequential to what this is, but it shows you that this is actually running live. And if I run across an error, I'm going to come back to this screen to see down at the bottom what I did wrong. So what we have here is the system is running in Docker on my local machine. You can run it in any Docker. You can run it locally as a software developer too, and you can follow up with me after this, and I can screen share with you to help get you set up if you want to look at it on your own local machine. So when you get the site running, it's going to look like this. This is kind of our test instance against an HCS topic and token. It looks a lot like snapshot.org, maybe for the was it the best compliment is stealing? So
we use the phrase inspired by, Jason.
Inspired by, yes. So it should be very familiar to those in the community already in how it kind of works. So we have a little bit of navigation, and I'll go towards some of this in a bit. But right now we have a list of proposals. Some of these proposals have already closed. The system automatically has a heartbeat. It checks and will update the data as we go through, and then does some tallies. And I'll show you a little bit more details about in a bit. But the first thing you'd want to do is say in this life cycle, you would want to create a new proposal. So anybody who wants to actually participate in this, I'm going to create a proposal. Let's say I'm kind of simulating our CGIP4, which is actually going to help us design our governance and voting model to approve it, the community. We have a couple of links that are required. One goes to the CGIP itself, typically that's stored in our the GitHub repository. That would be our case. And then a link to discussions. We're open to ideas of how we would want to embellish this and add more data in the future. Right now, we are limited to single choice voting, yes, up or down. And that's the kind of things that will happen in the future as we grow with the quadratic voting, for example. You can select a voting period. So the software kind of forces you to do it in the future, so you can't backdate and things like that. So I selected, to the end of the month, starting on April 2nd. I can preview to show this is what it's going to look like when it's actually in the system. The next step I need to do is connect to a wallet. Right now, we only have a kind of a manual way to do this. So I connected my wallet, but this will be the screen where you will be able to connect the Hashgraph and a Hashpack through the Hash Connect and other wallets in the future. So I am going to go, I've connected my wallet, I've entered my data, and I'm going to publish. And since this is kind of copy and paste, this is a bit of a manual step. So this is our topic that we're publishing to. I'll try to select it. And I'm going to go over here to my other system that I can use to manually enter this. So I'm going to copy this whole payload. And this is the part where I have to cross my fingers that it works. So I am going to be payer 734 here. I'm going to submit this HCS message. I have already set up my keys. And in theory, I submitted this message. I can go back to our screen over here and message and see if it made it through. And I'm very nervous. Message added the ballot. Sorry, it is right there. I'm so nervous, I forgot. Message for 8,423 was added as ballot, where the ballot ID is the consensus timestamp, which
we love a live demo, Jason. I would say that what Jason kind of just highlighted is one of my favorite aspects of the HCS-based architecture that we worked on. You notice that he didn't have to submit the HCS message from the web app that we built. He didn't have to use Hashpack. It's a completely keyless, submission keyless, admin keyless HCS topic. And so you can submit your votes or your proposals from your command line, from our website, from Jason's bugbytes.net tool. All the important interactions are fully on chain. And so I think that that's one of my favorite things about the architecture that we're striving for. But continue, Jason.
Yeah, thank you. I had forgotten to make that distinction there. It is pretty open. It's kind of cool. Well, as you can see, we have this status of queued. That is the one that we just created. Community governance and voting, CGIP4, things check out. You don't see any voting down in here because voting will not open until April 20th. So we can't vote on that one, but I can demonstrate voting on the one above it, I think. So this is what it looks like. We can see that no votes have been cast yet. I hope this works. 4/5 closes in April at the end of the month as well. I am going to vote. So I'm already have my wallet connected. I'm going to select yes. I'm going to vote yes on this. I will vote and we'll get a similar copy. So I will come over here and I will actually submit my vote now. With integrated wallets, this will be easier because you'll just have the wallet pop up and say, do you authorize this submission? But we do this little song and dance here briefly. I go back.
This copy and paste back and forth that highlights how excited we are about Hashpack and Hash Connect coming to maturity and kind of reaching version 1. So we're very excited about it.
So let's see. I probably do, this is still beta software, so I probably need to refresh. And you can see that my vote is here. And now you can see my vote registered in here. So we go, we can type, let's just look at, say, this one here that's already been voted. So a couple of things we can see about something that's done is we have our current results over here on the right-hand side. We have a list of who voted, ranked in reverse order of how many tokens they had. So that's their weight of their vote. And up here there's a checksum, and I'm going to point that out because this is important, because this is a checksum of how the votes were tallied, and I'll explain why this is important in just a second. So this is what it looks like when it's done. I'm going to go back to a simpler, smaller vote because of time, for time constraints. So we had the very first vote in the system that we have categorized here. And as Cooper mentioned, we have other validation tools that if you don't want to run the website, but you want to make sure that this vote was valid and you agree with it, you can download from the website as well, one of two tools, one that runs in Node, one that runs in .NET. And you can validate your voting by running software that you've examined, just like we do in crypto in general, trust but verify. I ran this other software in Node that goes into and interrogates our HCS node through a mirror node, downloads all the votes, all the balances, does a computation to tally the votes. And we have one that runs in .NET. It's not as pretty. Seems to take a little longer right now, but we see this. We have if we can get this over here. Yeah, I should have done that. There we go. So we have the attest results, we have our ballot ID, we have our tallies, and then we have this hash. So the result was 1, which in this case is no, it failed. But we have DA, it starts with DA 22, DA 22 ends with 74E, ends with 74E. We have the same results for our node implementation, so that if you trust this code, which may be easier to read for you, depending on what you want to do, you can trust that you ran code that confirmed that that vote was a no or a yes. And that's it in a nutshell. So,
yeah, thank you so much for the demo, Jason. I don't know what you had to be nervous about. That seemingly went pretty well from my perspective.
You never know.
Yeah, that's the best part about live demos and shipping software before you integrate Hashpack or anything like that too. Really, community gets to see how it gets made.
Absolutely. And it did turn out great, Jason, especially your ability to navigate all these different windows on the fly is extra bonus points for you. But we really appreciate, this is incredibly slick stuff, I think, and one of the more mature uses of Hedera and HCS, I think we've seen at least live in the market today. Curious just to follow on with a couple questions here. To start with clarifying, it looks like each ballot gets its own topic. Is that the right mapping?
No, that is not a model that we have defined. So each DAO is effectively its own topic. So when you spin up the software in the Docker config, you define a topic, and you can see in the environment config that Jason set up, anyone can go look at this topic and you can see all of the historical proposals and votes that have ever happened in this DAO. We really thought that if every vote was its own topic, it'd be really hard to kind of keep track of which topics you need to maintain connections to. Then you have like a discoverability problem. And so each DAO is effectively its own topic.
Cool, super interesting. And then how do you think about, or where does spam prevention come into play through all this?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the whole kind of idea about DAOs is you vote with the weight of your tokens, right? You need to have a vested interest and ownership in the DAO itself. And so kind of like proof of stake, DAOs have a token-based Sybil and kind of spam prevention mechanism. So before the vote happens, we know and can use Hedera's mirror node APIs to know the weight and the balance of everyone's accounts. Only messages that have a specific token balance will get counted. So basically between the spam prevention on Hedera, HBAR fees to actually mitigate someone sending a DDoS through the consensus service topic, and then only counting votes that actively hold tokens, there's really no way to kind of game the system other than wasting a bunch of HBAR on network fees, I guess.
Sure. Absolutely. And then what's, I guess, on your end, obviously anyone can kind of recreate the end results of the votes, but within this application, that's, I guess, a JavaScript file that's kind of calculating there if the token and the weights there and adding everything up. Is that the right way to look at it?
Jason, you want to break down kind of the web app and then the read-only HCS API?
Yeah. So there's kind of three major components in this, and one is the Hedera network itself, and that is going to be the proof of record, or that's the source of truth.
Mm-hmm.
You have this read only from the outside point of view, software system piece of code that just needs to run all 24/7, and it connects to a mirror node HCS service feed. So it'll get as it will listen for new events coming from HCS. It'll receive them, it will look at it, it'll say it's valid, not, it'll do a bunch of checks, and then it will add it to the state. And it just keeps this running state from the beginning of the Hedera topic to the end of the Hedera topic. And as you know, in the future, we may include databases, but right now you could consider it just an in-memory database. This thing is sitting there. Anybody can go to the REST API. It's an open API, and query any ballot, any vote tally. And then there's this other static view-based website that basically is configured to connect to one of these possible many REST endpoints. And that gives you the user interface view. And you could run it locally off your own machine based on somebody else's HCS system. And then there's the Web3 component where you use a wallet to actually submit back to the Hedera network. So you have Hedera, wallet to Hedera to service to website to wallet.
Easy.
Very Web3.
That's right. And I too am excited for you guys to add that Hashpack connect. It would be pretty powerful and enabling. And then could you go into a little bit more details of like what's in that actual payload there, or how you guys have thought about, what you're actually sending in that message?
Yeah, let me, maybe the easiest is actually to share my screen really quickly. And I can show you where kind of all of this lives and gets kind of managed. So hopefully you guys can see the Creators Galaxy improvement proposals.
Yep.
So this is the Creators Galaxy, the improvement proposals, very similar to Hedera improvement proposals, except kind of the difference being that the Creators Galaxy has a native protocol token that will act and operate as a DAO. So that these are proposals that will end up getting voted on with the software that Jason just demonstrated. And so we have a few in here. So we have one about like the meta process itself, right? Outlining how you submit a CGIP. We have one about creators consenting to use their social tokens on different applications. This is very much kind of like a, BitClout made a bunch of people social tokens without their consent. This is really an inverse model where creators should opt into allowing applications to use their social tokens. This is a proposal for issuing verifiable credentials that attest to someone's influence or status as a celebrity. And CGIP4 is the most interesting one. This is how we actually do voting. And I would say this process itself is subject to the voting. So if the community wants to have ranked choice voting or have staked votes or staked Calaxy tokens be worth more, they would come in and propose a change to CGIP4 that would end up getting voted on in itself. And so to answer your question a little more specifically, this kind of outlines how we take a snapshot. We use the Hedera REST API to retrieve the balances of accounts that hold a particular token. We're definitely going to validate that against another Hedera mirror node of your choice at some point. And so this kind of outlines how we use the topic. So all governance messages will be submitted against a single HCS topic. No restrictions who can submit it. It'll be immutable, so no admin keys. And different propositions will be distinguished by a unique identifier. There's 4 types of messages we send over HCS. So you can create a ballot. You can add a snapshot, which is the weight of people's tokens. You can vote on a particular ballot after there is a unique identifier. And there's a way to post and publish the ballot results with the checksum that Jason discussed earlier. So as long as you're sending HCS messages that, match this JSON schema, regardless of where you're sending them from, it'll be completely interoperable with the validation tools, with the CLIs, and the website itself.
Very cool. That's exciting. Cool to see, the Creators Galaxy come online really here and start to see that kind of open source development come into effect too. For those unfamiliar, it might be helpful for a quick primer on kind of Creators Galaxy versus Calaxy and how these things fit together.
Yeah, absolutely. So Calaxy is really kind of the original kind of genesis of what we expect to be a broader blockchain-based ecosystem and protocol. So what the Creators Galaxy is it's a social and community governed ecosystem that allows people to create social tokens, so tokens for an individual person or community or group, as well as NFTs, which are fundamentally digital collectibles. And by defining community governed standards, we can make sure that all of the ecosystem, all the applications who care about social tokens, who care about NFTs, can be interoperable and fully permissionless between them. So we don't just have a JSON token that is only usable on Calaxy applications. You can make a JSON token on our app, but then if anyone wants to, they can integrate Hedera and through using the distributed ledger, actually have interoperability amongst these tokens, amongst these payment methods, and amongst their decentralized identities. So, anyone that's building NFTs or social tokens in the Hedera community is more than encouraged to look at the standards that we're putting out for social tokens, for collectibles. And if you participate in this ecosystem, those tokens will by default interoperate with Calaxy as well as, our variety of partners.
Very cool. Great to be building that kind of open infrastructure, really. For a lot of people to tap into if they want to. And so a question from the audience here, our friend Nubasato, I believe, was curious about the details of the proposal and if the URL, is a risk or I guess an attack vector that could be added after creation.
Jason, do you want to talk about how we finalize like the links and the metadata on a proposal?
I'm not too sure I follow. I mean, I guess you could at this time put a malignant or talk about putting a malignant URL into a proposal that could cause problems.
Yeah, I think their question is like, if I create a ballot on this GitHub discussion, how do I as a voter know that the topic and the contents of that discussion aren't going to change? And so in our case, the first message when you create a ballot has a link to a discussion topic. And so we'll embed that GitHub URL into the Hedera consensus service. And that initial message will get signed a unique ID. And we really like GitHub as this model and kind of source of truth for discussions, because by default, they all have provable version history based on how Git does version control. So looking at the commit changes to GitHub over time, you will be able to see what the contents of that ballot or that discussion thread said at that point in time that people were voting on it. You could use other mechanisms, like you could distribute that discussion thread to Filecoin or Arweave or IPFS, kind of a content addressable network. Or you could use GitHub and kind of rely on their version tree over time. It's a good consideration for an attack vector, though. Like there is an idea that someone could upload a discussion that says 1 million tokens are going to go to this account. Everyone votes yes, but at the last second, someone tries to swoop in and submit a pull request that changes it to a different account address. And so those are definitely things that, we'll consider as these things get more live and more real. And we see more DAOs on Hedera that are actually controlling, sizable treasuries.
Yeah, that is exciting. I'm curious, have you been approached by other DAOs, to talk about using this tool, or what's the ecosystem level of involvement there?
Yeah, I would say that we've gotten a lot of really good interest from the DAOs that people might be familiar with on Hedera. You know, in particular, Matt Smithies and Dovu have a really unique approach in the carbon credits and ESG markets. And he actually already submitted a CGIP proposal and change to implement cross DAO voting on Hedera, which I think is really unique. We've also been in conversations with the Hashpack team, actually a little bit about starting some other DAOs. Headstarter.org is doing some really, really interesting stuff in this space. And I would say that there's a few other organizations that have treasuries or ecosystem funds that, you know, have definitely been in discussions about using this. I think once we get that Hashpack integration kind of squared away, as well as an HBAR based voting system, whether that's, you know, HBAR directly or XHBAR through Stater, it becomes a lot more interesting to the HBARbarian community.
That's right. Absolutely. And so I'm curious, does Calaxy have plans to kind of, you know, host this service for others in terms of, if I'm a DAO, you know, are you going to host like a snapshot.org like solution?
Yeah, so right now it is a web application, you know, really focused on one community. It is absolutely in our roadmap to add that aggregator homepage where you'd be able to click into each DAO and see the history of that HCS topic. I'd say as soon as there's probably, you know, 3 or 5 live in production DAOs, we're going to prioritize integrating that aggregator functionality. But for now, you could see, you know, Calaxy hosting this. You could see if Dovu's doing cross DAO votes, they could host the same thing on their URL. And so I think once you have a few of them online, we'll really focus on supporting that kind of, you know, aggregator experience for the whole community.
That's cool. That'd be exciting. I'd love to be able to participate in these things a little bit more. Well, great. I think this is a really cool thing, and so excited to see kind of Calaxy's overall improvements, especially the last few months. You guys have been cranking out a lot of good stuff. Any, you know, general other Calaxy updates we should know about, or things you guys want to share about where you're at?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say number one, we're sponsoring the Hedera 22 Hackathon. We're sponsoring the Best Decentralized Financial Primitive Challenge. There's $5,000 of prize for whoever builds the best DeFi primitives. We have open office hours. If anyone is looking for support and stuff like that, you can schedule time with me and Jason and our team. In addition to that, we just published HIP 405, I believe, which is updated JSON metadata standards. This is kind of like defining the metadata for fungible tokens, specifically for our Calaxy tokens and the social tokens that we're creating. I think that that's in maybe the last week of community review. So if, you know, the community's building fungible tokens, we would love feedback on those. What else? We are fully revealing the details of our initial NFT drops on April 19th. That'll include the first 3 collections of Calaxy collectibles. So far, we've teased out the first of which is 26 variants of Myro, our little logo here. Those will be on sale for $26 each as an ode to Spencer and his jersey number. So we're really excited to test out our drop infrastructure. And yeah, I think without revealing too much, you'll see us doing more and more open source software, releasing some more tools, and seeing more stuff go live on the mainnet. So that's about as much as I can say without revealing too much.
Absolutely. A question I think from the community that they want answered is, when is Paul Madsen going to be back on Twitter?
Oh, geez. I don't know if I can answer that for you. You know, Paul, when he originally left the Hedera team, went into a quiet retirement and spent some time to himself. You know, through enough of my begrudging and bugging him on Twitter, we managed to convince him out of retirement. I think he'll come back when the time is right and when the community needs him. He'll come back.
It's always darkest before the dawn.
Yes, it's always darkest before the dawn. I do know that he's alive and well. He just published that blog post for fungible metadata standards earlier this week, and he's enjoying his time off from the Twitter sphere.
I bet. Well, we miss him, but it's great to catch up with you too. Jason, anything you want to throw into the mix here and add?
I think you guys covered this pretty well right now, for all we can say.
Well, I hope so. You knocked it out of the park with your demo. So hats off to you there.
Thank you.
And thanks, Garrick. I'm glad that we managed to get another brotherly Hedera webinar in. So I'm very, very excited about that. Thank you, everyone who tuned in. And if you're interested in using any of the software we put out, we'd love to hear from you. Join our Discord, reach out to me or Jason. And we're excited to see DAOs hopefully thriving soon on Hedera.
That's right. Just DAO it.
Just DAO it.
All right. Thanks, guys. Always a pleasure. Cheers.